On this video, we're going to be looking at some commonly used angles within trigonometry and their corresponding radian measurement. So you should have a circle that you can fill in with these at your disposal. Now these are angles, again, as we become more and more familiar with the idea of radians, these are angles that you need to be able to recognize just like that, without having to refer back to a chart or a table or use a unit multiplier like we did for some of the other problems. So I'm going to show you some tricks to help you figure this out, and the better you get at this, the better you're going to understand the concept of radian measurement. So on the inside of my circle I have a bunch of different degree measurements. On the outside we're going to put the corresponding radian measurement. So I'm going to start with the easy ones. I'm going to start with 0, 90, 180, 270, etc. So we are going to look at 0 degrees. Well, how many radians is that? Well, that's going to be 0 to begin with. Then, when I get to 180 degrees, remember that we had pi radians equal to 180 degrees. As I get all the way around to 360 degrees, so the full circle, remember that was equal to 2 pi radians. So 2 pi radians, 0 radians, again, that's the same thing because those are coterminal angles, whether you're in degrees or radians. Now, as I cut up my circle, my rotation into certain fractions, this is how I want you to think about this. 180 degrees was equal to pi radians. 90 degrees is half of 180, which means that in radian measurement, 90 degrees must be half of pi. Now, some people will say pi over 2, but I think if you say it as a fraction, as half of pi, it helps lock in the connection from degrees to radians. 90 is a half of 180. Half of pi is half of pi. Makes sense, right? Now, 90 degrees is 1/2 of pi. Pi radians, you can think of it as being maybe 2 halves, because 2 halves is equal to 1. So as I continue to rotate, when I get down to 270 degrees, well, that's another, if this is half and this is 2 halves, here's another half, so I would say that 270 degrees is the same as 3 halves of pi. Again, you can say it 3 pi over 2 if you like, but if you say it's 3 halves of pi, again, locks in that connection to degrees. And then I get to 2 pi, well, let's think of it as 1/2 pi, 2 halves pi, 3 halves of pi, 4 halves of pi. Understand that 4 halves is equal to 2. Now we're going to think about it, the next set of angles, like this. I'm going to go with 45 degrees. So as I think about 45 degrees, 45 is half of 90, right? And 45, if it's half of 90, it means it's 1/4 of 180 degrees. So you can think of it as half of a half or a fourth of the whole. Either way, 45 degrees is the same thing as 1/4 of pi. Again, pi over 4, you can say that, that's fine, but 1/4 of pi is going to make more sense here. Now, as I continue to count, I got 1/4 of pi, 2/4 of pi, 2/4 equal to 1/2. When I get to the next 45 degree angle, 135 degrees, that's going to be 3/4 of pi. 180 is 4/4. Next angle we're into, that is 225. Well, that's going to be 5/4 of pi. 270 is 6/4, reduces to 3 halves. And then 315 is going to be 7/4 of pi. And again, 8/4 of pi is equal to 2 pi. So we've taken care of another set of angles. Again, these are numbers that we should be able to recognize. Fractions of pi. Next fraction of pi I'm going to look at is that of 60 degrees. So we're going to count by 60 degrees starting at 0. So we go 0 to 60 to 120 to 180, etc. 60 degrees is a little bit bigger than 1/4, right? 60 degrees compared to 180. Well, 60 is 1/3 of 180, which means that this would be 1/3 of pi. As I continue to count by 60 degrees, here's another 60. Well, that means 120. Well, that's 2/3 of pi. I keep counting. Here's 3/3 of pi. 3/3 equaling 1. The next one by 60 takes me to 240. Well, that's going to be 4/3 of pi. Another 60 will take me to 300. That's going to be 5/3 of pi. And finally, another 60 takes me to 360. Well, that's 6/3 of pi, and 6/3 is equal to 2 once again. Now, the last set of common angles we're going to go with is we're going to count by 30s. So 30 degrees compared to 180 degrees, well, that's 1/6. So that means 30 degrees would be the same as 1/6 of pi. Now, we've already used some of these that count by 30. So they count by 30, I go 30 to 60. Well, that'd be 2/6. Well, 2/6 is 1/3. I already got that one taken care of. And then 3/6. It's 1/2. We got that taken care of. 4/6 is 2/3. So this next one must be 5/6 of pi. 6/6, 180. 30 degrees more will take us to 7/6 of pi. 8/6 is the same as 4/3. 9/6 is the same as 3/2. 10/6 the same as 5/3, which means our last one here, 315, would be 11/6 of pi, which takes us to the final 360, which would be 12/6 of pi. Excuse me, I messed this up. That should be 315 again. That last measurement should be 330 degrees. Please excuse my diagram. So, again, you could use the multiplier that we practiced before, pi over 180 or 180 over pi. But I think the better you can think about radian measurement in terms of where it is on a circle and which degree measurement it matches up with. Again, remembering that they're all fractions of pi. So a fraction less than 1 is going to be something less than 180. A fraction greater than 1 times pi is going to be something that's between 180 and 360. So with practice makes perfect, these are angle measurements that you should know in radian mode without issue.